In this episode, we talk about some technical challenges of building our products. I share about a technical challenge developing FusionCast's recording feature, some UI, UX design mistakes, and more. Alan shares about building his business in Japan and challenges reaching different types of audience. We also talk about the challenges of finding a good stopping point to end a coding session, creating content and owning it, and adding in product help features with video and more. So here's our conversation. So last time the recording failed, obviously. Your video never uploaded.
Right. The audio did, right?
The audio did, but when I reviewed the audio, there was a problem with the audio as well. Somewhere along the way, like halfway through, where where it kind of started all over, kind of thing.
All right. So at the beginning, right, looped.
And then there were some weird things going on where the audio was not in sync with the video, and all of that.
Interesting. So you basically cried a little bit, like, "Oh my god, what bugs do I have to fix?"
Exactly, and that opened up a can of worms. But I was very grateful and glad that we did that test, and we tried recording, because that started me on a path of trying to figure out what the heck happened. And it was super challenging to figure it out, because in the end, it was a combination of a logical error that I had, and basically I made the wrong assumption, or made an assumption that things would happen in a certain order. But of course, with the nature of JavaScript being asynchronous, that came to bite me, and that was the core issue with, or the main reason why it failed.
Right.
So there's, when it records, right, FusionCast records a separate track for audio and a separate track for video. And so for audio, it was seemingly okay. And then video obviously failed. And so before I realized that there was a problem with audio, I kept thinking, well, it's working. It's the same code that I have, basically, but one is handling audio and one is handling video.
Right.
How come it works well for audio and it doesn't work for video?
Right, of course. Yeah.
And then until finally I decided to inspect the whole audio, because we recorded like an hour, a little over an hour.
Over an hour, I think, yeah.
So as I was working, I played your audio.
I'm sorry, you had to listen to me for an hour.
Actually, no, this is what I did. I remember now. So much has happened that that's why I wrote a few notes here. So, so what happened was, I kept thinking, how come it works for audio but not for video? And then finally I decided to inspect the whole thing. And as I was working, I decided to put the two tracks together, not just yours.
Sure.
And so I aligned the two tracks, and I started playing it in the background as I was working, just to see,
see if they actually
the
stayed in sync, and it was all that.
Yeah, and all that. And all of a sudden, I spot this problem with your audio, where it goes, like halfway through, it goes back to the beginning, like the very first thing that you said in the very beginning, and it had been like almost 30 minutes.
Wow.
Into the recording. And so I was like, wow, okay, so it's not just it's not okay for audio either. So there's something here. And so long story short, I was able to figure out, after about a week or two, it took me a long time, lots of debugging, lots of console output, console log, and just banging my head till I figure out that I had made the wrong assumption that things would happen in a certain order. The core, or the main issue, was that things were happening asynchronously, obviously the nature of JavaScript, but also because of the whole thing depends on the network connection and how quickly it can upload every chunk of audio data and every chunk of video data. I also had the two processes working simultaneously at the same interval. And so that was part of the problem. So I changed the interval to, I forget what I did now, but one is like every 3 seconds and the other one is every 7 seconds or something like that. So
right, so they're not both trying to contend for network activity exactly the same time, and plus you've got the added fun of me being a hell of a long way from a data center, so the latency is not as predictable as it might be for you, right?
exactly. So there's latency to take into account, and so so then with all my console log output, I was able to actually see how it was every chunk of data is being handled out of sync completely, because it starts sending one chunk and then the next one is ready and then it goes and the next one is ready and it goes and then they finish at whenever time they finish. It's not sequential at all.
Sure.
And so there were some chunks of data that were stepping on to the other one, and part of that problem too was that the way I was keeping track of the chunks of data, right? Because I'm tracking them, and as soon as I upload them to the cloud and I get confirmation that it's been uploaded, I delete the previous one to conserve resources, because I don't want to keep adding to the user's memory and keep adding to the local drive. So I just keep track of everything as long as I need to, and then when I know it's been uploaded, I reset it. And so I'm only keeping track of the latest data that's being generated by the microphone and the camera, only as long as I need to. And so I had a logical error in that area as well in my code, where it wasn't doing it the right way. So it was a combination of things that took forever to figure out, because it was the latency, the nature of JavaScript being asynchronous. I know it. I work with it every day, all the time.
It catches you out often, that, to be honest. I mean, I'm the same, right? It's like, I know this, and then sometimes you'll be like, and then you do this, and it's like, no.
Yeah. And I'm like, of course, it's things are not going to happen at the same time. Yeah. And then when you add the network latency, it just, you can't count on anything. Everything has to be handled in a way that you take into account the fact that it's going to be every chunk of data will be done whenever it will be done.
Right.
I had to refactor a lot of my code and did a lot of testing. To add to the problem, also, the recovery mode works in conjunction with recording, because the way it records has to keep in mind how it's going to recover. And right. And the way it recovers is based on the way it recorded, right? just how I have my logic and the values that I save and everything they work together.
Sure. Especially if you're deleting stuff as you record it, as it's uploaded, then there's this, yeah.
So if when recovery mode kicks in, if I didn't save things in a way that's compatible with the recovery mode,
you're not going to recover anything.
Right. It's not going to work. And so I wasn't sure. The very first thing, or the very first problem that I faced, was figuring out, okay, what failed? Was it the recovery that is not working? There's a bug somewhere there, or is it recording that is not working? And then once I established that recording wasn't working, then I figured, okay, recovery never had a chance to work right. properly if recording doesn't handle things.
What's it going to recover, right?
Exactly. So after I fixed the recording part, I had to work on the recovery feature, and I reworked it almost from the ground up to be compatible with my improved way of recording.
Again, especially if you've changed a lot of the assumptions with regard to how it's recorded, then your recovery is going to be completely rethought, right?
Exactly. So I had to, pretty much rework it all. And now, knock on wood, I think I got everything.
I guess we'll find out.
We'll find out today, but it's recording really well. I did long tests of recording for over an hour.
Okay.
And then I synced up the tracks and I compared everything, and everything looked fine. and recovery mode works really well now because recording is working well.
Right.
So
yeah, as you said, it didn't stand a chance before, right?
exactly. So the only thing that I still need to do is what you mentioned earlier, where if for whatever reason recovery absolutely cannot work, I need to add a way to clear it up completely and just give up, you know?
I mean, so yeah, as it stands right now, it's trying to say, well, I'm trying to recover, but the recovery is failing. Well,
yeah, and there's no way out. And the other thing that I still need to do is make that recovery mode available outside of this interface, the studio. This is what I call the studio. Right now, that only works if you go into the studio. So you have to hit the same URL,
right, of course,
in the browser that you used, and then recovery mode kicks in when it detects that there's data there.
Mean, in theory, that should work whenever somebody goes back to FusionCast as a whole, right? It's like, hold on, there's stuff here hanging out, hanging left over from something else. Let's kind of get rid of that first. So.
Exactly, and that's that's the next iteration that I need to improve upon. But obviously, the first thing is the darn thing needs to work to begin with.
Yep. I mean, I guess one of the big things you've got to always consider is that the other party in this, as in, like, you know, in the case of this meeting, it's me. It's the person who didn't initiate the meeting is likely not going to be familiar with the software. Is likely not going to. May not be technical, even may just be like, you know, okay, I can open a browser and click on a link and do this, but like, yeah, you can't expect them to suddenly have to, you know, deal with stuff on demand. Like, well, actually, can you go to this URL because your browser didn't close properly? And so
yeah, exactly.
There's a lot to consider.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. The fun never ends.
It's funny. It's like every time you think you've reached, like, you know, I don't want to say ready, but close enough that you think, oh, you know, it's ready for somebody to do something. Then you suddenly peek under a corner and you're like, oh,
yeah,
it's like turning over a corner of the rug and you're like, nah, not yet.
Yeah, not yet.
I mean, it's a constant battle, both technically and product design wise too. It's like, well, how much of this do they need? You know, needs to be finished, and you know, maybe if I just glue down that corner of the rug, it's not a problem.
Yeah, and so the other thing that I did another round of UI sort of test with my wife.
Okay,
again,
because you've got this new like control bar at the bottom now, right? So
yeah,
looks good.
Yep. Thanks. And it's going to change even more still, but I had another round of having her help me out, you know, looking at the product and using it, and we uncovered some other points of confusion in not here in the studio, but in the back end part of the app.
Right. The actual management part.
Yeah, the management part, where I have two types of sessions. So each podcast can have multiple sessions, recording sessions,
right.
And then each session, the recordings get filed under each session.
Right.
So that's kind of how it's organized. The UI to manage the sessions, I have two types: the scheduled sessions and the unscheduled sessions, which I'm calling anytime sessions on the UI and, you know, for the users. But basically that's what they are: scheduled sessions and unscheduled sessions. And before, I had them all combined into one list where you just had sessions and you could see them all, and there were indicators, you know, this one's unscheduled, this one's scheduled, and
right.
You know, and that kind of stuff. But then it got kind of confusing because you could schedule a session in that same list. There was a button to schedule, but then you would have, as the list grows, then you would have scheduled and unscheduled all mixed together, and so it kind of got very confusing. And some of the feedback that I got from my wife was to maybe split them, you know, split the two lists so they're nice and clean.
I mean, the thinking behind this is, like, say for instance, you know, we have a weekly call where, you know, we record or something, but then if you know, had a talk with somebody else and you wanted to keep it within the same show, but as like an additional thing that was more of an ad hoc call, right? That's the idea, right?
Yeah, that's the
That makes
idea.
sense. Mhm.
And also, if you need to share the link, maybe use it with some third-party software like Calendly or
Right.
some other software where you want to put a
Mhm.
shareable link so that people can connect with you. So basically, the scheduled sessions within FusionCast
Mhm.
are more for you as a host to schedule
Right,
with
right.
somebody else.
Okay. Yeah, because right now you've got the show name and then the actual scheduled session, right? Yeah. So you want
Yes.
more of just like a show page that when anybody goes there, they can join a new unscheduled session and it's all good. But they're kept in like a separate bin, right?
Exactly. Kept in a separate bin. Exactly. So recordings get organized better,
Nice.
and it sort of reverses the burden of scheduling, right? If you share the link with someone, maybe on Calendly or
Mm.
some other tool, then they're scheduling for you, right?
Right, right.
And so in that case, FusionCast needs to support different kind of sessions, so to speak.
Yes.
In the process of doing that, I uncovered a major flaw with the way that I had it, the unscheduled sessions. I wanted the feature to be so seamless that if you share the link and someone went to it, if you didn't have a session already available, unscheduled session already available, it would create it for you automatically. It would just create it because it needs to have that for the studio to work.
Right, sure.
And so I thought it was great because it was, automatic, and it'll, if it doesn't exist, it'll create it, and great. Until I realized that really takes control away from the host.
Sure. Right, good point.
Because the other idea that goes along with this is that the unscheduled sessions could be in one of two statuses. It could be available or archived.
Right.
So if it's archived, you can no longer use it. You can no longer record in it. But if it's available, it'll do it. The link will work and everything. But if, let's say, you don't have any unscheduled sessions, or you have archived all of them, when someone visits that link, it'll create a session for you.
Right, yeah, sure. They're screwing up your organization as the host, right?
Exactly. And you have no control over it, just by virtue of someone somewhere on the other side of the world visiting that link will create a session in your account.
Yeah.
And then when you go in there, you could be like, what the heck? I archived all of them, or I didn't have any. Where did this come from?
Sure, yeah.
And so I was like, this is really bad. This is really bad.
It makes sense on a high level. You're like, oh, it's great. It's, they can just go ahead but then realistically,
yeah. So
especially if you've got all these things scheduled and you're trying to keep it because it might be fine at first. You've got 5-6 recordings, but as time goes on, that's going to grow a lot, right?
Yep.
And if somebody goes in and messes that up for you, not good.
Yeah, it was bad. So I removed that feature entirely. So I had to rework that out as well. That feature is no longer in place. So, so now both kinds of sessions need to be created manually by the host.
Gotcha.
It improved the software so much because of that automatic creation. The way it used to work was that you could only have one unscheduled session available, and the other ones,
right,
because it would check, is there one available?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay, let's reuse that one.
Yeah.
And if it checked and then it didn't find one, then it would create one. So for that reason, you could only have one in available status.
Mm-hmm.
And if you wanted to create a new one, you would have to archive it.
Okay.
And then it was really
so this way I could effectively create different sessions for different people, and they'd all be kept together, right? So even if there's multiple sessions and they're unscheduled, at least they're being kept in. I've give this person this URL and they're all there, right?
Yes, exactly. So it became so much easier and so much cleaner doing it that way. And I was like, I don't know what I was thinking when I designed it that way. I was like, it made everything so much more complicated and muddy, and Now it's so much cleaner.
There's parts of .plan as well. I've kind of, because you're so focused on certain things at a particular point in time, and I've been so focused on like effectively the check-in system and scheduling those, and sending out reminders and being able to comment, react, and all the rest. And then there was the the organization and team management part, and I kind of I think I mentioned last time I started to flesh that out a little bit, just because from feedback from people, speaking to people, like, no, we need that team management, even if with smaller teams, we need that. So I kind of went back to it, and I'm like, I honestly don't know what I was thinking here. Like, looking at the code, I can't even remember what I was trying to achieve with the system I had in place before. So,
yeah,
it's like, no, let's just rewrite this. So, that actually, I mean, it's slightly less topic of what we're actually be doing, but there's something I saw, it came up on the like topic that a few people posted about this week, and I was also speaking to somebody else about it. It was this idea of like keeping an architecture decision records, which I know GitHub do amongst other bigger companies, and also like an architecture document for your application. And it's something that has bitten me so many times when working with smaller teams. This whole thing, it's like, well, we've done this. Why the hell have we done this?
Why? Yeah.
I mean, you're so focused on such smaller chunks at a time that everything, it's like, this is why we've got millions of notebooks hanging around, right? As you think, well, if I write it down, I'll remember it. But keeping it in just like this record of, we keep records of, like your PRs as to what we've changed. But one of the projects that I was on, there was this enormous README file that no one ever dared touch, because it was kind of written back a long time ago. And even though this isn't the product anymore, it's too big an undertaking to trying to go in and update it. And also it's like, well, where do you even start? It's such a big thing that, and even if it is, then where's the record of why those things were changed? So it's something that I will, trying to figure out what a version of that is for a personal project, and also for another project that I'm working on. It's like, well, there's a few of us working on it. Just keeping those discussions, not in Slack, which is great for discussing those things and making those decisions. But then, well, let's record it somewhere and record it as to make sure it's searchable and understandable when we look at it in 6 months' time, and we're like, what? Why did we do this? So
yeah.
I mean, even on personal projects, there's value to that, right?
Yeah. The challenge, though, is that I think part of the problem is that we're working on these projects as side projects, yes. and we want to strike a balance between what we really need to work on and other things that yes. may not, may take a lot of time, and you don't know if it's really worth spending that time doing those things. Totally. Because you want to get this thing out the door and get feedback from people. And absolutely. So I mean, if you're writing all these documents and stuff, and everything's going to change anyway. So, it's like, it's kind of tricky.
I mean, it's this constant like balancing act of like, we're trying to, as you say, on one side, you're not against the clock, but you want to get this out there as soon as you possibly can. Right. And then there's all these other things pulling you, like, you need to, keep track of this. Yeah. So I mean, for sure, I think for personal projects, even just like probably your Git check-in history is as bad as mine for this side project type idea, which is like done stuff working on this with WIP, and you're like, I probably should at least put a sentence in there as to why I did this. And it's again, I'd never think of doing that on a client's project. I'd never even like, oh my god, I would never do this. So why can't I at least take 30 seconds to at least write a full sentence, right? There's probably a something to be learned, but maybe not quite the full thing, right?
Yeah, and I think part of it is that we know at least for now, we're going to be the only ones looking
Right.
at this, and we know what we're
I
doing.
mean, I know everything.
No one
Yeah,
else is going
exactly.
to read
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
So,
Unfortunately, I also know how bad my memory is. So, like,
yeah.
I said there's a balance somewhere. I'm not sure where it is yet, but I'm going to try and improve at least my checking my Git commits because
Yeah.
It's,
No, I do the same. I do the same. I try to put at least a little sentence there, but sometimes it's like, especially if you're out of time and you have to go somewhere or do something else, and it's like, okay, sometimes I have a pretty bad habit that I've been trying to work on.
Only one?
Of Well, one of many. I have a hard time finding a point where I can stop. And so sometimes my wife expects me that I'm going to stop working at a certain time. And then time comes and I'm not done because I'm trying to find this spot where I can stop and kind of like have this mental model, right, of where I stop so that I can continue later without wasting too much time coming back to where I was.
Exactly.
So and sometimes it takes me forever to find that that point.
Yeah, I mean, I often find this. It's like if I have that, I'm getting to recognize points now that are somewhat natural break points. So even though I know I've got another half an hour and I could probably start on something, I'm like, I'm not going to get to a meaningful break point within that time. So it'll be like, well, we need to, I'm expected for lunch in, 20 minutes. It's like, just stop now and I'll go and do some reading or something that isn't working on this, because it's like it's not going to work.
and that's what I need to do. I need to get better at recognizing that and do something like that. Go do something else that will take less time, that I'll be able to stop any moment and not start something or continue. Right. Sometimes it's hard to find or to recognize, at least for me, to recognize that moment where I can stop now, even if I have more time.
Yes, yeah. Well,
because I always want to squeeze all the time that I can.
More. Yeah, I mean, it's the same. I have the same problem with going to bed, right? It's like, okay, if I go to bed now, it's too early. I could get some more work done. But if I start this, I'm never going to go to bed and I'm going to feel like crap tomorrow. So it's like, it's not easy, and I don't know if I'll ever get that.
Yep.
It's so the fun of juggling multiple projects and multiple lives at once, right?
Exactly. So I think that's all I have on my end of things. That's my update. That's all I've been working on, and I'm hoping to be able to. Yeah. I'm hoping to be able to start contacting people that I have on my list, people that are interested in trying FusionCast, and I'm a little behind schedule on that because I've been working on these issues, but I'm hoping to get there this week. Tomorrow, sometime this week, where I can wrap it all up and start scheduling
exciting
onboarding sessions with people. Wicked. And I'd like to have an onboarding session with you too. So
absolutely,
I can get you on board and so you can try it out.
Cool.
So hopefully sometime this week I'll wrap things up.
So are you obviously these initial onboarding sessions, you're going to do one-to-one hand-holding, kind of walk people through it.
Yep.
Are you thinking of making the same thing but like video-wise as well? So it can become part of like a people can onboard themselves a little bit more in the future. So
yes. So for now it's just because it's private beta,
and also things might change a little bit before then, right?
And things will change, based on feedback, for sure. But once the product is a little more stable and it's not going to change so much, then I'll record some screencasts, and I have a knowledge base that I'm going to be populating with articles, kind of like documentation, frequently asked questions, getting started, that kind of thing. And I'm going to embed some screencasts on there.
Right. I mean, the reason I mentioned that is so there's a product somebody I know is building, and it's called Bento now, and it's marketing, email marketing, chat, live chat, basically anything to do with automated marketing. And so he recorded these screencasts, like part of the onboarding process of screencasting, explaining, what this is, how to set this up, and it's kind of like a mini course of videos. They're short, like 5-minute videos of like, this is how you create this thing, this is how you add this to your site, and it's all just like mini snippets of like what a part of the product does.
Is that embedded in the product, in the UI?
So he's actually got it right now as link directly on his landing page, right below the banner, the header. And as someone who will use it but isn't using it yet, just being able to be like, hold on, it's easier for me to just watch a few minute clips just to get an idea of how I can use it, rather than is to try and interpret documentation of someone's idea of. I do the same thing if I'm either investigating a product to potentially to subscribe to, or even from a competitor's point of view. It's like, well, someone's doing this, how are they doing it? The first thing I do is go to YouTube and look for, because even the most enterprisey software, somebody's that you can't see, there's no visual of their product on the website apart from like contact us for a demo. You go to YouTube and there'll be somebody walking through stuff. It might be, a previous version or something. But just getting that understanding of actual real use as opposed to just pure marketing is, it really helps understand the product for me anyway. So I thought it was just an interesting way to have it even directly on the landing page. It was like, oh yeah, that works for me personally. So, generally it might work for other people too.
Yes, I've thought about adding it once I update my marketing site. I thought about adding a demo video so that it shows, quickly how it works. Yeah. So I will be doing that. And I was thinking, like I mentioned, to add some clips to the knowledge base, so people can actually see. So less text, more video. But what you just said is giving me an idea that maybe these clips could be embedded in the product itself,
right?
Somewhere in the UI where you can just click a little icon and then it pops a video that shows you real quick how to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things, again, the advantages we've got being, indie and solo developers. And something what I'm really trying to do with building this as well is it's me building it. It's not a team, and adding that personality of like, this is how you do it, and actually it being from you as well kind of adds that little bit more of authenticity and something. I know it affects my decisions as to which products I choose. Who are the people behind this. So again, I can only do things which I think are right, as opposed to which what everybody else thinks, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, definitely. That'd be nice. Yeah, I've been toying with similar idea too for myself. Yeah, it's like, rather than just linking to a help page, it's like, well, pop up a little video of just this is what you do. You can it's a 10-second, 20-second thing of how to do a thing. It would be kind of cool, right? Because
yeah. And it keeps the person in the product, right. And less reading. I mean, a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? And a video is a lot more. So
I mean, I'm kind of, I'm not a big fan of the the onboarding thing that pops up like a thing and it takes you around the whole UI. This is for this. This is.
Oh yeah.
I'm not into those at all. I don't like those.
I don't like those either.
I'm trying to avoid that, but at the same time, offer help for people when they try to do something they haven't done before. I mean, I'd rather click around a product and try to understand it myself. But I can imagine a lot of people, it's like the help would be useful. So yeah, what's something that I approve of and like that isn't that is actually useful for them. So yeah, that could be a nice solution.
Yeah.
Onboarding is constantly like gnawing away at the back of my mind, and it's
I know.
It's like you've got a very short period of time to to explain to somebody where your brain is when you built this, right? And it's like, this is what you should be doing, please do this, and they're like, no good, close.
So
it's constant.
It's a tricky part. Onboarding is really important.
Yes. So I've had an interesting few weeks. So the product is again hurtling towards some kind of launch. So as you know, my big one of the things which makes my launch kind of entertaining is launching in Japanese and English at the same time. So I've decided to slightly alter that a little bit. So I'm still planning on going ahead with the two launches as close together as possible. But I'm not going to let the Japanese version not being ready stop me from launching the English one, is the kind of decision I've made. I was planning to be like, okay, you can now switch between Japanese and English. And but just from a pure pragmatic getting the thing out point of view, and also all of the research and the feedback that I'm getting, the Japanese version is going to be slightly different from a marketing point of view, from a even just explaining what the product is. There's a different take on it, and I think I don't want that to become a blocker for getting the English version out. So that's kind of a decision that's made like things a little bit more achievable in a shorter term in my head, just because it is hard work building into languages at the same time. It's difficult. I mean, even just things like dates, it's how dates are displayed or how dates are expected to work are just subtly different. And it's like, this is just, what am I doing? So I know I can iterate so much faster in English that it's, we're still, the Japanese version is still coming along as well. All of the, as soon as something is working well, we're translating, we're kind of considering all of the things we're building, they're considering also from a Japanese point of view. But I'm not going to stop that not being ready from me launching anyway. So I think that's probably sensible.
Yes, I think that's the right decision.
I think so.
I think that's the right decision for sure. I mean, you're in Japan, but just because you're there, I think it's good to think about the other side of things as well. There's a big market outside of Japan that I'm sure that you can target. Right?
Exactly. So, and I think, it goes both ways, right? There's obviously Japan is the third largest, is probably third now, largest economy in the world, but it is a different working style and different working environment. And I think there is there's definitely an interest in this, in what I'm trying to build with Dotplan right now here. And it's still an underserved market. I mean, there just isn't that much choice. There's still only relatively few people building new software compared to elsewhere in the world. So I think it is a really interesting and very exciting opportunity for us to launch here. But also I don't want that to become, our stop us from doing things elsewhere as well. So that's that's a thing.
And especially since in your position, it's probably easier, the Japanese market and the culture and everything that influences how you build a product is probably a bigger learning curve for you than the English market, right?
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
So I think it's a good decision to go and target that, the low hanging fruit first.
Right.
What's easier for you, and then once you get going there, then you can branch out and expand into the Japanese market. That way you get there faster.
Right. I think long term, potentially the Japanese side of it could be probably more interesting. But just because I think the industry here, especially with regards to how work styles are changing, it's a lot of the things that the application is doing are already practices in other parts of the world, and it's kind of like I don't have to convince people that to do these things, they're probably likely doing a variant of this, or it'll easily fit into the way they're working. Whereas here, it's like, you want us to do what? So, but at the same time, the changes are happening incredibly rapidly here, in terms of, like remote work was literally just didn't exist. Until the coronavirus situation, and then suddenly it's like, well, hold on, well, we've got these massive offices in Tokyo that are costing us literal arm and legs. Then it's like, well, hold on, we probably don't need this. So once they've tasted a little bit of remote working and seen that it can work in some way, this, I think, is going to snowball a little bit, and to be part of that could be a really good thing. So
yeah,
I don't want to miss the opportunity, but at the same time, it's a hell of a lot easier to launch in English.
I think in the long run, it's gonna speed up your time frame to reach the Japanese market, though.
Yes,
so
I think
because
so
if you're focusing on sort of easier path, that will help you learn more about your own product and how you're building it, and and all that stuff. And so once you shape that better for the market that you understand better, I think it's kind of counterintuitive.
Yes. By improving the product in English, it's going to make the Japanese product better.
Yes, exactly.
No, I agree.
Yes.
I agree.
Yes.
So, I mean, the other biggest news is, so I think last time we spoke, we'd applied for some bank loans.
Yes.
And so the reason being, the background briefly is that when we set up the bank account, the startup advisor at the bank that was going through the process with us was like, so how much loan are you going to apply for? And we're like, loan? And they're like, well, you're a startup. The city helps startups, and the government also wants people to start companies, so there are probably loans available. So how much do you think you're probably going to apply for? And so, okay, let's try, because I'm still I'm bootstrapping with doing other work, having a little bit of a buffer zone as for the company to be able to spend on, for instance, marketing or design work, means that it's not killing me trying to pay for two things at once, right? So with the business plan, we approached, we took to the bank and also the government bank, and we got approved for both. So we actually have a little bit of funding in one way. I mean, the interesting part about the loan from the bank as well is that the interest rate is 1.3% and it's over 10 years. So it's kind of, it's not a huge burden. I mean, long time-wise it is. I mean, you can pay off at any point in time, but it's not a huge amount of money. But just having that little bit of a buffer has meant, those things which it's like, can I spend this much to, get a designer to do this thing? And it's like, well, actually, I can now, because it's an investment in the product. So it was interesting as well, just the fact that to get kind of affirmation from the bank that it was actually an investable business, or worth taking the risk on, because it wasn't wasn't just like, well, you're making a company, so here's the money. It's like, well, what are you building? Why are you building it? What's your financial projections? What's your path to market? What's your marketing strategy? And so we had to write a big business plan, which, again, I think I've said before, I really think it's helped me a lot understand what I'm trying to build. And it was interesting, the points they raised with it. There was a general, like, okay, we think this is it's reasonably good idea, was the feedback. They had ideas about the type of market that would probably be interested in using it in Japan, which is slightly different from what I expected in the rest of the world. So it also gave me an idea of what changed. This also kind of pushed me a little bit towards this idea of, okay, maybe the Japanese one doesn't have to be launched at the same time, because the bigger, the more likely opportunities here are with bigger companies, either through partnerships or through some kind of a partnership type system seems to be very strong here. So it's like, well, hold on, mate. If I'm not going for the smaller I don't want to say SME, but more SE, then maybe don't have to rush it as much. Let's kind of get the product right, and then when we approach them with it, it's a much more well-rounded, much more mature product as well. So
yes,
that kind of influenced that as well. So yeah, it's kind of weird to now actually have a small budget in the bank to be actually, I mean, nice. Although it's also weird because I'm so used to being so incredibly frugal with this that I'm like, $100 for what? It's difficult to almost mentally commit to spending some of that money, because it's like, you know yourself, everything is a personal decision at this point, right? You know, it's like, am I spending this money on this, as opposed to, you know, it's the company spending it. So it's
right.
It is a slightly difficult thing to get used to, but it is also very different than if it was a VC or an angel type investment as well. I think there's still a part of you that knows it's your money, or rather somebody else's money that you're spending, rather than the company has investors who expect certain things. So it's still different, but it's also taking a little bit of getting to understand what that means. So it's been an interesting development anyway. And the other interesting logistical thing. So yeah, product wise, you know, technical wise, I'm just kind of burning through my ever increasing list of things to get it launchable, right? And trying to chop that down as much as possible. But I also spoke to a lawyer regarding. So again, it's a Japanese KK, Kabushi Gaisha, Zenocode is the company. So it's a Japanese share company, effectively. I don't know what the equivalent is in the US, but, you know, it's the company has shares. You know, people can buy the shares privately. But also that has...
So it's like a public corporation.
It's not traded. Okay. So it's still a private company, but it means that you know, I can effectively take investment if I wanted to sell shares to them. There's like a number of different types of companies here. So I think it's more like an incorporated company in the US. Here it's possible to have a company that you can't do that. So there's a differentiation. So, but obviously the not having a very strong background in terms of Japanese law and legal responsibilities of a company here, I was like, okay, so am I doing anything here releasing this that I really need to consider from a data point of view, from a you know, data crossing borders point of view? Because again, it's likely that it's going to be hosted outside of Japan, just because the hosting situation here is less mature than it is on, let's say, just AWS. Well, I mean, AWS is a Tokyo region, so that's always a possibility. But yeah, what do I need to consider? Is that something, if I'm not targeting the Japanese market first, but I'm a Japanese company selling to British or American customers, then yeah, what happens here? Where is there anything I need to really consider? So the city again has this startup advisory service, and there's a lot that the city is trying to do to get people starting companies to you know, creating startups. And so one of the departments is the employment consultancy service or something. I forget, there's an acronym. And they deal with like employment disputes or hiring people or being hired yourself. So they did anything regarding human resources, hiring, firing, that kind of thing. But they also, I approached them and said, you know, like, what can you give me advice from a legal perspective with regards to like privacy, terms and conditions, data, and all the rest? And so they're like, sure. So I actually had a chat with an American lawyer who's based here in Japan I think he moved here longer ago than I've been alive. So it's like 40 something years, and it's like, I
Okay.
guess you know what's going on. But it's interesting because he, obviously has a good understanding of the Japanese law, but also from an international perspective as well. So I had a long list of okay, I need to ask these 20 questions in the space of 30 minutes because it's free. But it was really helpful. I mean, he both from a what's the privacy situation, what's in terms of terms and conditions, legal responsibilities. So that was that was really helpful. Just I mean, the long and short of it is be scared of Europe, not of America. The EU's data protection laws are so strong that if you can conform to that, then you pretty much should be all right anywhere elsewhere in the world. Just because it's so much stronger than anywhere else. I mean, I kind of knew that, but just being told, even with regards to Japan, he said, they're so much further behind in the data privacy laws that if you can hit European standard, then don't worry. I'm like, okay. There is things to consider with regards to data leaving the country, which is always difficult to understand the implications of it. But again, the long and short of it, he seemed to suggest, was as long as you are upfront with the privacy of the data, what is stored where, what you're storing and why you're storing it, then you're fine. As long as it's correct and in black and white, then you're okay because they're agreeing to this. So he said the thing to consider though is whereas in say Europe you're quite likely to get individuals coming to you for I don't say coming to raising issues of privacy or of some flaw in your data privacy, then here it's more likely to be a government department following a checklist to hold on, are they doing these things? And he said that department may well not have a computer in their department, but they still got to follow the checklist to make sure that you're doing all these things. So he said there's a strong possibility that someone will want to check this from the government, but again, as long as it's detailed and it's you have records of everything, then you're fine. So it's kind of reassuring. So again, nice that the city offers this service, and also I get apparently another 2-hour consultation that I can schedule with him that effectively the city pays for. So that's kind of it's kind of quite cool. Very useful.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So it makes me feel that I've not overlooked something, especially regarding data privacy. Is you don't want to get that wrong, right?
Right.
So,
right.
Yes. So one of the interesting things he suggested as well was, I'm like, well, there's lots of templates for privacy policies and terms and conditions online. How am I okay going with one of those? And it's like, as long as you agree with everything in it, otherwise, change it, and I can effectively sign off on it and say, okay, that is legally correct, if you like. So it's been interesting kind of looking to, I've actually been reading terms and conditions and reading privacy policies on sites, okay, which first time for everything, right? And it's kind of fascinating from a, what do I actually want to what do I actually want to do here? So when you find a site which I thought was reasonably very straight and they're not doing anything, and you read their privacy and it's like, well, we're going to sell your data to these people and this, and I'm like, hold on, wait. We reserve the right to basically do whatever hell we want. I'm like, well, I don't want that. I want to be quite one of the things I really want to promote is this is your data. You can, this isn't mine. I'm providing a service for you to do certain things with your data. It's not my data though, right? So it was interesting going through and actually I disagree with this. Who is doing this that I actually agree with? And so I can use that as the template for what I want to do.
Yeah. So you're learning more of what not to do, right?
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. And so that was kind of, I mean, it's there and people are continuously doing stuff with your data that you probably don't want them to, but it was interesting going through it and actually consciously deciding, making those decisions about what do I actually want to be my company's policy. Again, at this stage, it's me, but who knows? There could well be employees. There could well be other people that might be able to access this data. So, what's the company policy with regarding this? And yeah, it's been an interesting process. And of course, I've got the added fun of doing this in Japanese and English as well. So, finding sites that have both English and Japanese policies, so I can kind of understand how they correspond, and then being okay. So what is that in Japanese? So everything's because even if I'm only launching in English, I'm still a Japanese company, so I have to adhere to Japanese law, right? So it's
right.
I still have to have this in Japanese. So yeah, added fun.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's fun never ends.
Yeah. I haven't taken the easiest path here, I'll be honest. Like doing things on hard mode, right?
Yeah. Did you consider at all in the past forming a company in the US, for example, or?
Yes. I mean, so that was my original idea was I use Stripe Atlas and form a US company. After talking to a few people that have done it, I think it works well for a lot of people. I mean, especially if you want investment, then it's kind of a no-brainer because the investment opportunities in the US are then not even vaguely comparable to here. So that would make sense. However, not being an American citizen, I am currently not on the American tax books, right?
Right.
By then owning an American corporation, I then have responsibilities declaring. I personally have to become part of the American tax system, which, as you know, is quite overwhelmingly thorough. And a few people were like, just why would you do that? Why would you become part of that system? Right. So yeah, I think unless there's a very strong reason to do it, I think personally it was like probably not the right thing for me to do. There's also so I also considered the Estonia has this digital resident e-resident system, and you can form a company in Estonia, and it's incredibly interesting. I think it would work really well for, again, a lot of cases. And in my case, it probably would work very well too. So one of the, there's very interesting tax situation there as well. But the tax and money situation kind of became the reason why I decided to not do that. One of them. So because I'm based here and because Fukuoka City is trying to promote startups, trying to help, if I go in and say, well, actually, I started a company in another country, I'm just here and I'm doing all my taxes and spending money elsewhere, they're like, why should we help you? Right?
That wouldn't look all that great.
No, it doesn't really go down. So, I mean, if I'd moved here and the company was already existing, it'd probably be a different situation, because then there'd be the incentive of like, well, maybe you could have an additional office here, and there's a different situation. But just say no, I just started elsewhere because I don't want to deal with
sure
like...
that that wouldn't look very good.
I mean, exactly. And there's also the fact that I live here, I pay tax here, I have friends here, my life is here, right? So I don't have an aversion to paying for the services that that make my life livable. So paying tax and being part of the local network and being part of the local system is personally, I feel, the right thing to do as well. So that was and our intention is to be here for however long, maybe indefinite, we don't know yet, but there's a chance we'll want to buy a house here, we want to move apartment, and having no job here makes life very difficult, whereas being a company owner and having an accountant and paying your tax here is like, well, you're a real person. You exist. You can, of course, you can
Yeah.
move to this apartment.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to buy a car? Sure, you exist. As opposed to like, well, actually, I don't have. I try to avoid. So
Yeah.
just that commitment of actually being authentic here as well was a big part of that. So it has made things more difficult. Yes,
Yeah, in
for
some
sure.
ways, but it makes a lot of sense that, you know,
Yeah.
you know, everyone has different circumstances, and this is a better fit for you. And,
I mean, it
you
probably
know,
is costing me a whole lot more, that's for sure. And it also, you know, again, makes life difficult in terms of just accounts, in terms of bank accounts, legally, and all the rest. But it, you know, if I was more of a digital nomad, then hell no way. If I didn't have ties to Japan, this would not be a great place to come and start a startup, unless you had very strong reasons for doing it. Having said that, you know, the help from the city has been really helpful, but compared to the ease of doing business for me in the UK, it's like, oh god, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, they're worlds apart. So it has definitely meant taking on the game at hard mode, but it's a learning opportunity.
Hey, it's a journey, and
it's a journey. It is indeed.
And enjoy the journey.
I mean, actually, speaking of journeys, I started to write an intro post for Indie Hackers as well, because I'm like, you know, I need to really start talking to people about this. You know, so part of this whole process is like, okay, I need to. I've been my entire product, you know, development life. I've been very bad about talking to people about what I'm doing, and so I'm like, okay, you know, gotta.
That is excellent. I've been thinking about that. Actually, it's good that you brought it up, because I've been thinking about that. I started working on FusionCast a little over a year now ago, in November of 2019.
Before the world went crazy.
Is when I started. And I began right at the beginning. I was posting sort of like a weekly update, you know, publicly, for accountability purposes. But I only did it a few times, and then once the pandemic hit, everything went upside down, and my whole, you know, routine changed, right? And so I should have kept doing it, but I didn't. So I need to get back to that. And actually, my personal site is down because I took it down. I
don't even know what's on my personal site anymore. I should probably look sometime.
And so I want to get back to that. You know, I want to. So one of the things that's on my list is to bring my site back up and start posting there. I'm not a big fan of social media, so I'm still on Twitter, but I'm not in any other social media at all. I closed all my accounts. I kind of like that sense of the old school web, when you had your own blogs and you posted and you own your own content, and it's not somebody else's you know, content. And so I want to get back to that.
Same here. So actually that's raised an interest in something I was going to say as well. Is I'm the same. I'm like, I've been notoriously, you know, my blog has been, I've had a blog since, you know, 90 something, right? And it's been up and down, and stuff's got lost, and I just restart again. Start to import the old stuff, and I'm like, what the hell am I doing? This is like 20 years out of date. So it's like, so I was like, okay, you know, I'm gonna do it again. I want to own my own content, but I came across you know, Hashnode. So it's like it's similar to Dev.to, which I think is an awesome site for, you know, people writing basically dev blogs. Hashnode is similar, but they have a basically a GitHub sync. So anything you post effectively gets synchronized to a repo, which of course you can publish yourself. And you know, the T's and C's, which I've read, are basically you own your own content. We just allow an additional outlet for it. So effectively,
similar to Dev.to,
right? I think
Dev.to has that too.
They have that too.
And right. I mean, not through GitHub, I don't think. Okay. I haven't checked recently, but last time I checked, you could post on Dev.to via your RSS feed on your blog. So if you update your blog, then it goes, so similar.
I like the the people and the model behind Dev2 more than Hashnode. Hashnode is VC funded and all the rest. So I might relook at that because obviously I think I'd prefer to support Dev2 from a personal point of view. But the nice positioning of, I guess this is kind of where the brand positioning and the whole story is different. Is Hashnode is like, you can build your own personal blog, build a development blog, and then by doing that, effectively opens up more distribution channels because you can it will get posted into different topics and parts of the site. Whereas Dev2 is like, at least on the surface, is more of like, here's a community, and then, actually, you probably could post it to a blog. So their positioning kind of got me there. So I should relook at that. But yeah, I mean, one of the reasons that I thought about this was I had so I'm using Phoenix LiveView, right? Phoenix, Elixir, LiveView, Alpine, Tailwind is my kind of stack for this, which is interesting because I haven't launched a public product in it before. So this is my first actual released product in it, as opposed to tinkering around. I'm normally in Rails. And it's one of the things which is you don't really appreciate at first with Phoenix is that the community is really small. I mean, that there's good and bad to that, right? It's a really nice community, but it's also a lot of the times, you hit an issue or something that you don't know how to do, and you're like, I can't find anybody talking about this at all. There's no and so, it literally goes back to, okay, I should have done in the first place is read the documentation and then actually understand what it's doing, as opposed to like, well, what's the shortcut to me getting this done, which is just often not available. I mean, I probably should have done this in the first place, but again, it's kind of pragmatism. It's like, okay, let me look at somebody else that's done this and I can learn from it. And you're like, no, nobody's done this. No, they probably have, but it isn't obvious. And so it was, spent a few hours understanding it, and then it's like, this is really straightforward, and it's like, okay, so this is a blog post, right? This is the things which I always say, I should just write this down somewhere, and it's like, no, just write it up as a blog post. I'm like, okay, well, so let's do it then. So that was something I started last night after going through this pain of understanding it, and then of being blatantly obvious in the end, but not very straightforward, but not obvious. How's that? So yeah, that was the reason for like, okay, if I should probably start at least collecting this and publishing it as well. So talk. I say I'm very bad at speaking about what I'm doing.
Yeah. Well, and they say everyone gives the advice. Well, not everyone, but start promoting your product when you start developing it, and not wait until the end. So,
I mean, having said, like, this is true. I mean, I've whenever I've spoke about what I'm doing, even briefly, even as a just a comment on something about what I'm building, I'll see the hits to the landing page go up, and I'm like, okay, well, why am I doing this all the time? I should really be doing this all the time, right? So and just I should commit to being much more like, hey, everybody.
Yeah.
And this is part of it, right? Doing this, recording these.
This is part of it, yeah. But let's hold each other accountable.
Yes.
Let's
I need
let's try to, let's try to work on that. I need to do the same. So let's check back next time and see where we are and what progress we made in that area.
I'm going to call you out on Indie Hackers. How's that? On my post.
All right.
I'll be like, he's not posting.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, I want to start doing the same thing with Indie Hackers and Dev2.
Yes. And then effectively, there are other distribution channels. I mean, in the same way you said, like, podcasts via YouTube. I mean, it's not the obvious method, but it's surprising to me when you do watch a podcast on YouTube, you see the views, and you're like, okay, this, for a lot of people, that's how they listen to podcasts, right? So it's,
some people prefer video, and some people prefer audio or both. So all right, sounds good. Well, probably a good spot to wrap it up. Unless you have anything else you want to share.
All good.
All good. All right,
awesome.
Alan.
Thank you. It's been A pleasure as always. It's talking to you, catching up. It's been too long.
Yes.
The new year kind of killed everything. All my like habits just went to shot.
We dropped the ball for a little bit, but part of it was that I was
fixing the thing.
Yeah, I wanted to fix this thing
Absolutely.
before recording again.
Absolutely. Excellent. All right. I will have a good 2 weeks and say good work on the getting it working.
All right. Thank you.